So there's ordinary rich, and then there's rich rich. Unfortunately, I was just ordinary rich. Or I guess you could say fortunately, if you're poor. Anyway, my mom and dad were corporate lawyers and I lived with them and my older sister Cindy, who was more gorgeous than the most attractive model you can think of.
Aubrey, don't worry. It's because you're still growing. You're only 15 and I'm 17. I'm sure that by the time you reach my age, you'll be a total hottie too.
She'd tried to convince me from time to time. But if you looked at both of us, you'd be convinced that one of us was adopted because we looked nothing alike. I was just plain and boring looking. No one ever gave me a second look. But with Cindy, they'd stop and stare. Some would even want to take pictures with her. I bet you want to know how that eventually changed for me, right? Well, keep watching. I went to this super expensive school, and even though my parents were rich, they still struggled to pay the fees. But my classmates? Remember what I said about ordinary rich and rich rich? Well, they were loaded. The kids of multi-millionaires and billionaires. By the time most of them had their licenses, they'd drive to school in the most expensive cars imaginable, and sometimes, if they got into little accidents, they wouldn't mind. They'd just ask their parents to buy them a new car, even if it was just a scratch. No one paid much attention to me at that school. I had one friend named Regina, and we'd eat lunch together sometimes, but I spent most of my time in the library writing stories. I lived in my own little world, and I loved bringing it to life on paper. I had notebooks and notebooks filled with stories that I was hoping to publish someday. My parents wanted me to inherit their law firm, but I just wanted to be a writer. The beautiful girls in my class used to tease me about it all the time.
Oh, there's plain Aubrey writing in her stupid notebooks again. That's so lame. Instead of writing, why don't you go learn about fashion? Your clothes are ridiculous, and good gracious, you could use a whole lot of concealer and foundation on that face of yours. Yeah, and what's up with your hair? Ugh.
I went home crying that day, and Cindy greeted me with a hug.
Aw, what's wrong?
Everyone's laughing at me because I'm ugly.
They're just stupid. And besides, you couldn't be ugly if you tried. Anyway, I do have some good news for you.
What is it?
Well, it's your birthday next week and I signed you up for a total makeover. Not because I think you're ugly or anything. It's just that you're turning 16, and that's a good time for a change.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I wasn't too sure about it at first, but I just went along with their idea. My birthday came and we left that morning to go to a special type of salon where they took care of every part of your body. Hair, nails, face, toes, everything. I spent about 5 hours there, and when they were done, I could barely recognize myself. I was a total babe. Not only did they give me a makeover, but they also explained to me how I could maintain what they'd done. But it got better. When I got home, my few friends and all my family were there to celebrate my birthday. It was honestly one of the best days of my life because everyone kept telling me how beautiful I looked. The next week, when I got to school, people kept coming up to me asking if I was a new kid. When I sat in my regular seat in class, the mean girls surrounded me, and when they realized I wasn't really a new student, they looked a bit angry and walked away. Were they jealous of me? Then, two best friends, Alvin and Theo, came to sit next to me. They looked totally enchanted.
Hey Aubrey, you look different. Yeah, you're like a total hottie now. Do you want to go out with me next Saturday? Hey Alvin, shut up! I was gonna ask her out. Well, I asked first. It doesn't matter. Hey Aubrey, do you want to go out with me or this loser?
I was shocked. It was the first time any guy had asked me out. And the fact that two guys were fighting for my attention was enough to give me a headache. A good one. But hey, I forgot to mention that Alvin and Theo were billionaires. Their families were super rich, and they only hit on girls who were as rich as they were. Guys, please don't fight. Maybe I can go out with both of you. They agreed, but looked upset. They went back to their seats, but looked angry with each other for the rest of the day. I thought they'd sort things out amongst each other because guys are usually easygoing like that. But when I got home and checked my social media pages, I noticed that they'd deleted all the pictures they had together. Then they threw passive-aggressive remarks at each other, and I couldn't believe that this was really happening. I went to my sister's room to talk to her about it.
Oh yeah? Theo and Alvin? Everyone's talking about it. You're a total hottie now, so that's expected. It happens to me all the time. Welcome to the club.
So, how do I deal with it?
I have an idea.
The next morning, everyone gathered in the main hall for assembly. The principal was going over the boring rules, and then he started talking about friendship. That was when it happened.
Yeah, Principal George, I think you need to say that stuff louder for the people in the back. Yeah, people like Theo. Actually, I was referring to you, Alvin, you backstabbing son of a... Don't you ever come at me like that!
Suddenly, Alvin flew on top of Theo and they started fighting. The principal dropped his mic and stared. Clearly, he was confused. Then, what I saw baffled me even more. Cindy walked up to the stage and took the microphone from the principal.
Okay, boys, stop fighting. Everyone, listen to me, please.
The room went quiet.
These guys are both madly in love with my little sister Aubrey since her, glow up. She's a total hottie, right?
The crowd cheered. I turned completely red.
So here's my idea. Alvin and Theo, stop fighting. The two of you have to plan the most romantic date ever. You will both take my sister out at different times. Whoever plans the best date gets to be with my sister. Well, if she agrees, that is.
Alvin and Theo let each other go and stared. The crowd continued to cheer.
There, so that's that. We'll flip a coin to see who goes first. Alvin, your heads. Theo, your tails.
She took a coin and flipped it.
Alvin is first. You can have your date this Saturday. Theo, yours will be the following Saturday. Are we cool, everyone?
The boys nodded and the crowd cheered again. The principal took the microphone back and asked everyone to calm down. He didn't even comment on what had happened. I guess he didn't know what to say. I mean, I don't know what to say either. So let me skip the boring parts and get straight to my date with Alvin. His father has a few private jets because, like I mentioned already, he's a billionaire. Can you believe that he took me to France? He got his parents to ask mine for permission first, and they thought it was a really good opportunity, so they let me go. Now, most ordinary girls have their first dates at ice cream shops and pizza parlors, but mine was in Paris. The trip there was so romantic. We sat at a dimly lit table after we took off and had some non-alcoholic champagne because my parents told me I was still too young to drink. We played a few video games and then fell asleep. When we got to France, he had the whole day planned out for us perfectly. A tour guide came to pick us up from the airport and we had a tour of Paris. Then he took me to see the Eiffel Tower and after that, we had a romantic dinner. On the way back home, we sat close to each other and I eventually fell asleep on his shoulder. When we were almost about to land, he woke me up and said,
So, did you enjoy your date?
Of course I did. I had a wonderful time. Then he leaned in for a kiss and I nearly exploded inside. My first kiss after my first date in Paris on a private jet. How would Theo be able to top that? I wasn't even sure I wanted him to because I was already falling for Alvin. I'm gonna skip the boring parts of the next week and get straight to my date with Theo.
Hey, I heard that Alvin took you to France, but I have something much better. We're going to Thailand. I read one of your stories and I realized that you love learning about historical sites and that you're fascinated with other cultures.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Of course, Theo's parents also had their own private jet too, so getting there was no challenge. Because it was so far away, my parents allowed me to stay there for 2 nights on the condition that Theo and I slept in separate rooms. I couldn't believe they were being so lenient, but I guess it had something to do with him being filthy rich. Thailand was awesome. We spent one day at an amazing beach where we went rafting, kayaking, and snorkeling. I saw so many awesome sea creatures that I kept dreaming about them for months later. I learned a lot about Theo, and he seemed like a pretty nice guy. The next day, we went exploring some of the temples and other historical sites. We even went to an elephant sanctuary, which was probably the highlight of the trip. While we were there, I held hands with Theo, and I thought that I was beginning to like him a lot more than Alvin. When I eventually got home, I explained to my sister that it was really hard to make a decision. I was falling for both of them. She laughed, then left her room because she had to go to the bathroom. She left her phone on her bed and I picked it up to take a selfie. I took about 10 of them, and as I was scrolling through them to decide which one I liked best, I ended up scrolling too far. Way too far. And what I saw made my heart sink. There was a picture of Cindy kissing Alvin. I checked the date and it was just 3 days ago, while I was out with Theo. Just as I was about to knock on the bathroom door to throw the phone in her face to ask her what that was about, I saw a text come in from Theo.
Just got back from my date with your sister. She's not half as amazing as you, though. Would you still consider going out with me? I miss you so much, babe, and I can't stop thinking about the last time we made out.
It turns out that even though I was hot, Theo and Alvin were just using me to get to my sister. Apparently, they'd had crushes on her for like ever, and they had a bet between the two of them to see who could be her boyfriend. Instead of confronting my sister, I sent the picture and a screenshot of the text to myself and I posted it on all my social media pages. Now, everyone knew that Theo and Alvin were just jerks, and no girls wanted to date them anymore. My sister and I still aren't talking, and I don't know if things will ever be the same again. On the plus side, I'm still hot, so I will have my fair share of guys in the future. For now, I'm just focusing on my writing. I'm going to be hot, rich, and famous someday.